All right. It's the April meeting of the Stage Hypnotist Mastermind. Thanks for being here, and we're glad to have you here, and we are going to have some fun. We're going to talk first, again, standard thing. We always do a guest. We're going to do a guest interview with Dan Candell today, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. So anything that he talked about that you want to follow up on, we'll have a Q&A period. So if you're thinking of something, write it down, jot it down until we get to that Q&A period. Then after we get through talking with Dan and we have Q&A, then we'll go to Pure Mastermind, and we have an issue for that today that someone brought to me that they would like to have talked about. So we're going to talk about content creation for the mastermind portion today, and that'll do us. So first, we're going to start with Mr. Candell, who is one of my favorite people on the planet. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic, Paul. And I have to say, you are one of 4 people in this entire world that call me Danny, and I love it.
You will always be Danny to me. That's the way
I love
it is.
I love it.
You,
Jim Spinato, my dad, and one other person.
A rarefied air that I'm in there. There we go. Hey, how old were you when you got started? Were you 16 when you got started?
I was 13 when I got started.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I saw a stage hypnotist when I was about 12 years old on a family camping trip. And it was absolutely amazing. I memorized everything he did, went home and practiced on my friends in the basement, and it worked. So I never looked back from there. My parents bought me all these books about like therapeutic hypnosis. I'm like, help people. I don't want to do that. I just want to screw with my friends. And, but I helped myself. I taught myself self-hypnosis, and then it just went from there. Started performing, opened up an office in my dorm room when I was in college. And it just like, I've been performing and being on stage and also doing presentations and stuff like that since I was like 14 years old.
Wow.
It was epic.
That is epic. I mean, and there's a tendency, I think, in our profession for people to sort of get on one side of the fence or the other. Like some people may dabble a little bit, but ultimately they're either like, I just want to do stage hypnotism. I don't want to do client sessions.
Yeah. You want to help people.
People are like, I'm all about helping people. And right. Like, and they're like, and I don't want to do stage shows. Then you do have
hypnosis is evil.
It'd be interesting to see what that segment is where there is crossover.
Yeah.
Right. But you've stayed busy in both. Like, you are not a dabbler, right?
No.
Like,
no, I have 6 clients today, which is like too many, but 6 clients today. And then I also have a group that I do. So during COVID, I missed the stage side, and like, we're all hams. Like, we're on stage because we love to be in front of people, or at least for me, I should say, I love being in front of people. So I missed that during COVID. So I created a group, and I would do a weekly group, and it was like comedy hour and like hypnotherapy. And now I have about 120 people in my weekly group still that we meet every week. And I do hypnosis, boom. It's fun. It's effective, and it's healing for people.
Can you put your finger on like, what's the real appeal of the stage hypnotism for you?
Yeah. Dude, it just gave me a place to forget about my problems for a while. And, I grew up in a household of alcoholism, drug addiction. And, I went through years of therapy, and my therapist said, isn't it interesting, Dan, how you didn't have control over anything in your life when you were younger. So you went into a profession where seemingly you can control everybody and everything about that situation. I'm like, you clinical bastard. Like, you have me figured out. But it was true. Like, I didn't have any control in my personal life. So I went to my professional life and seemingly controlled what people think about, And so I think that was a part of the appeal, is it allowed me to heal with a lot of things that I have not or would not have had the opportunity to heal from.
Yeah.
I know that's deep, but
no, that's cool though. What about, what makes you stick with the other side of it? I mean, you've been doing a lot of work with helping people with anxiety. You've branded yourself the anxiety relief guy on TikTok and across other platforms.
Dude, I
Tell
thought
us
I
more
went
about,
viral, and then Zach
yeah,
Pinson's over here, like 8 bajillion followers. I'm like, okay.
that's an official term too. Bajillion. That's how many he has.
But no, so I actually had a traumatic incident on stage one time, and I almost quit hypnosis, and not many people know this. I had hecklers. We were talking about this. I had hecklers, and it was to the point where it caused, I didn't realize this at the time, but it caused extreme PTSD. And it was one night where something awful happened. I walk on stage, and it was at a Catholic high school. A couple of students started screaming like, "You effing fag, you queer, you homo, get off the stage." And I'm like, well, that's not very welcoming. So it got progressively worse as the show went on. Sometimes I do an intermission in my show. And during intermission, sent people back, had them do some skits in the audience. And when they came up, one of the assaulters, I guess you would say, he came back up on stage, and he wasn't even part of the show. He came up on stage. He clotheslined this girl who was hypnotized on stage, punched her in the face, and then basically like looked at me, like spit in my face, and then walked off stage. I got in my car, I cried, and I had another show the next night for 600 people. I'm like, you know what, Dan? It's a one-time isolated incident. Totally fine. Paul, I couldn't even get on stage. I felt so nauseous. I started throwing up backstage the next night for this other show I had, and that stuck with me for a little while. So I went to another hypnotist, and then I started using some other techniques that I use on people now. And people found out about it. I told the story, and it took me like 2 years to talk about it without crying. And after that, people started coming to see me for all different types of anxiety. And I studied so I don't just use hypnosis for anxiety. There's so many other techniques and methods and modalities that I use, and that have very little to do with hypnosis, but I combine a bunch of approaches. And that's what got me known worldwide as the anxiety relief guy. So that's why I think it's important to share your story with people, and not just, we have this persona, not just on social media, but on stage. Like, we are untouchable. We're perfect. No, you're not. Like, you're human, and people like human people. They like human moments. And that's why I think way too many of us, we live behind this like veil, or this like shield of the fourth wall on stage. And the more we break that, like, people like other people being human. And so many of us have this fear of being exposed. Like, being exposed to what? So I think just having more real moments on stage really, and just exposing more of yourself just really does help connect with the audience a lot more.
So do you overtly connect that work pretty regularly in your stage show?
Yes, I do. Yep.
Yeah.
So I do talk about some of the work that I do clinically. And I also, at the end of my show, I do something very similar to what you do. I just call it something different. I call it 2 minutes of transformation. And it's basically like 2 minutes to transform your life. And it's like a gift that I give to the people on stage. And I do something similar with what you do to like the superhero moment, but I relate it back to anxiety relief. And I teach them the stress reduction trigger, but I call it rolling the booger. And because it sticks.
Very technical. It's very
Right. So
it does. It probably, they don't forget it. Yeah.
right.
Cool.
Right.
Cool.
So Paul, were you taught like not to combine hypnotherapy with stage hypnosis, or because that was, I think that originally that's how I was taught.
I don't think I was ever taught that. It just seemed like, again, there seemed to be a sort of natural gap that existed in the profession,
Yeah.
that
Yep.
and especially, today still, there are people on the consulting side who are really vocal about, pretty much disparaging stage hypnotism and
Yeah.
saying it's unprofessional and it makes them look bad and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so there's at the minimum, I think there's a clear sense of camp,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Like that there's a lot of people who are either in one camp or the other. And then of course, there's always going to be a bunch of people like us who are really straddling the two camps and see the value in both.
Right.
But no, I never had anyone tell me don't do it. I think there was some I remember early on, like some of the people that were sort of mentors with me talked about the idea of like different brands, like sort of like keep your brands separate,
Yeah.
because you want I remember one guy saying, you want your consulting hypnotism clients to take you seriously, and they may not take you seriously if they find out you're goofing around on stage.
Yeah.
And I was
Okay.
like, well, okay, maybe, but I never really put a lot into that. So
That's where if I could do one thing differently, and I know this was one of your questions. If I could do one thing differently, I would definitely use my shows earlier as more as marketing tools to sell other products, and I would also do more like self-improvement seminars before I do my shows, or do them in conjunction with shows. I've started doing that more recently, and it really has taken off, especially to like schools and stuff like that. When you say, well, I'll come and do a fundraiser, but I'll also do a thing for like stress reduction, or I call it my anxiety relief power hour. I would have started doing that earlier and using my shows more as lead generation instead of just a show.
cool. What, you've been doing this long enough now. You've got trends, you've got habits, you've got some nice perspective. Like if you really think about what you've done on the stage side of things in particular, since this is a stage hypnotism mastermind, what do you credit your success with? What is it about you that you can like point at and say, I think this is a big part of why I've done as well as I've done?
Being the young guy has definitely helped. And it at first it like really held me back, but as when I was like 14, like no one wants a 14-year-old hypnotizing them. And but moving moving into like my 20s, I got away with so much that I would not have been able, that like someone else wouldn't have been able to get away with. And I remember high school senior nights, like lock-ins and stuff, used to ask me to do like X-rated shows, and I would, because, and which I like now we know like no. But I was just young. I was like their age, and I was like, let's get down dirty with like the hypnotist. And it worked, and I could do that. And I think that really launched my career, where being the young guy actually helped because people could relate. And that's why I'd work with a lot of schools and stuff. But now it's like I started getting some gray hair in my beard, in my sideburns, so I can't do that anymore. So yeah, no more dirty.
I forget sometimes that you really stepped fully into that at different points of your career, that you were just like, yeah, let's do it, let's just see
Yeah,
what happens. Like that's where you've got some crazy stories.
dude, I pushed the envelope way too
You're
much,
an
I
envelope
think.
pusher.
In some of the shows I've done, that's why like, I talked to other hypnotists, and they're like, that happened to you? I'm like, yeah. Like, why? I'm like, well, I probably did some stuff I probably shouldn't have done. um my one of my friends, she says, Dan, you have 3 baseball bat stories, which is 3 too many baseball bat stories
Yeah,
of
seriously, good
people.
lord.
Right. So yeah, anyway.